Hello, my name is Kyle Artis, and I would like to welcome you back to my channel entitled Family, Let's Talk About Money. Now, if you're new to the channel, the way it works is I invite you to come sit at my table and we have discussions about things that will hopefully help you make better financial decisions. Now, everybody is invited to the table, but I like to tell everybody up front that the primary direction of the conversation will be focused towards those in the Black community, my community. And that's because other communities have been having these discussions around their kitchen tables for years, but that's not the case in our community. And that's something that I want to change. So the idea is you come to my table, we have these discussions, and then you start having these discussions at your own dinner tables until hopefully one day, many of these discussions are taking place throughout our community. Now, as always, my channel is brought to you by my insurance company, AIC, which stands for Artis Insurance Consultants, where we specialize in life insurance. So if you have some questions or you would like to get a free life insurance quote, please give us a call. The number is 1-888-532-1153. Now, this evening, we have a very interesting topic that we're going to be discussing. We're going to discuss how the breakdown in family is keeping us poor in the Black community. We need to realize that annually, the Black community in this country brings in about $1.6 trillion in income. That means if we were an independent nation, we would be one of the top 10 wealthiest nations in the world. But yet in this country, we own less than 2% of the wealth and less than 1% of the land. So how is it a community that brings in so much in income has so little in wealth? Well, there are many avenues that we could discuss, but one that I want to focus in on this evening that I think is a very big problem is what I like to describe as divide and conquer. And the divide and conquer that I'm talking about can't be blamed on the white man. Cannot be blamed on institutional racism. No, the divide and conquer that I'm speaking about is self-inflicted. Let's take a look at the Black community. Right now in our community, 70% of the children that are born in our community are born out of wedlock. We're married at a rate of 30%. And of those that are married, they will be divorced at a rate of 42%. So as we look at these numbers, we may ask, how can we build generational wealth? And the answer is actually simple. We can. And this is sad, because at one time we were the most married people in this country. From the years 1890 to 1960, those in the Black community were married at a higher rate than those in the white community, of over 80%. And this was at a time period when we basically had no access to wealth. Most of the jobs that we were able to get were menial jobs that paid very little money. We didn't have access to banks. And then the government programs like the New Deal, the GI Bill, that really help give the white community an economic base, well, we were denied those programs. So having a strong family and strong communities, well, our ancestors realized that this was actually essential for their survival. But yet in the late 1960s, 70s, 80s, we began seeing major changes going on in this country. There were landmark court decisions, new government regulations, new banking regulations. At this time, we were able to start getting good jobs with benefits that paid much better in factories and with the federal, state, city governments. See, things really started to change, and all these changes made it to where we were no longer denied access to wealth. So this should have really been a renaissance for the Black community, allowing us the opportunity to do what our ancestors were denied, and that is build wealth that we could pass down to our children and our children's children. Yes, during this time, generational wealth should have been the key, but yet we decided to destroy our families, which brought us to the numbers that we discussed earlier. Let's look at those numbers a little closer. 70% of our children today born out of wedlock. Well, what does that bring about? Well, we see many women with multiple children living on government assistance. We have men with multiple children, and at times with multiple mothers, or multiple baby mothers, that on payday, when they go to get their checks, well, half the check is gone, being paid out in child support. When we look at things like this is not conclusive to building wealth. In fact, it's just the opposite. And then we look at the marriage rates being so low. Let's use an example of a lady and a man who look to be doing very well. They're both educated, they both have good jobs, they make good money, they have beautiful homes, drive nice cars, wear all the latest fashions, and you will look at these two individuals and think that they really have it going on. But are they building wealth? And what we know is oftentimes they are not. Because to live the lifestyle that they're living, although they're doing well in income, it's taking about all that they have to live that lifestyle, not being able to save money to invest. But let's say those two people come together. Well, see, we already know that they can live that lifestyle on one single income. So with their combined incomes, well, they can still continue to live the same lifestyle and yet on one income, and use the other income for saving and investing. That is how you build wealth. And when we look at our our divorce rates being so high, we have to take marriage seriously. We take it way too lightly. When we ask someone to be our spouse, we should be saying that we're asking them to I want you to come build an empire with me. That should be the attitude when we ask somebody to marry us, that we're going to build an empire together. Don't get me wrong, there are legitimate reasons for a divorce. But I'm talking about the many, many divorces where you're divorced because of irreconcilable differences. That basically means somebody done got on your nerves or you're not happy no more. And we need to realize that a marriage is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And any marathon runner could tell you that they know that at some point in that race, they're going to be what is called hit that wall. That's when the muscles start to cramp, the breathing becomes uneasy, but yet these runners realize that if they just continue running, because they may feel like they want to quit, but they know that if they can continue running, they will break through that wall. And that's what happens. They continue running, the cramping in the legs start to loosen up, the muscles come back, and then they get what's called a second wind. And now they got their breathing back intact, and now they're running effortlessly towards their goal. See, marriage is the same way. We're going to hit walls in marriages. But if we continue on our course, and that may include prayer, communication, counseling, whatever it takes to push through that wall And then we can get by those bad times and continue on towards our goals. Think of it like this. I know many people that have worked jobs that they could not stand, but they didn't leave it. They retired from them jobs because to them, they knew that job was important. They needed that job. So are you going to say that a job is more important than building your own empire just because you were unhappy? See, we want to think of it that way and really be serious about our relationships and know that what we're doing is not just about us as an individual. We're building an empire, which is going to include children, grandchildren, and we want to build something solid. So yes, there's going to be issues, but we don't want to bail too easily. I want to give an example of really what it's like to build generational wealth. And I'm going to use a young couple, both 20 years old, married at 20, and like most 20-year-olds, they come into it with nothing. But before I go into that example, I know there's already people that are saying, what are you talking about 20? That is way too young to be getting married. And for some reason, it's only in our community where we feel this way. In fact, I've heard many people in our community say when asked, what do you think is a proper age to get married? And they'll say between 35 and 40. For people that feel that way, I want you to think about this. Our lives is much like a ball game. We get 4 quarters, 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80. Anything after that, you're in overtime. So for those that feel that way about 35 to 40, you're basically saying that you want to start building your empire at halftime. See, no, you want to start younger because many people for some reason think that they'll build generational wealth by, I'll go to school, I'll get this good job and I'll make this money and then I'll have money to pass down. But that's works like with 1% of the people, like professional athletes, entertainers, and things like that. A basketball player gets a $100 million contract. Yeah, that would make generational wealth. But that's 1%. We're talking about the other 99%. For the rest of us, building generational wealth is a 50-year plan. So you want to start that plan as early as you can. So now getting back to our example. We have the young couple, both 20 years old. They get married, like we said. Like most people at 20, they start out with nothing. That's why they often describe in the first few years of marriage is that you're living on love, because that's about all you got. But this young couple was determined to build an empire. So they found out that the wife was pregnant. And what they did that week was they immediately went and opened up a bank account. And they were going to set aside $50 a week to go into that account. That account was not going to be touched no matter what happened. That account was for the child. So now the years go by. Now the child, will say that he's a son. The son now is 21 years old himself. And he has found a young lady that he wants to build his empire with. Well, could you imagine the pride the parents would feel that on their son's wedding day, that they handed him a check for about, let's say around $55,000 to help him and his young bride start their life off with. Over $50 a week, over 21 years, that's what it would come up to, just putting money in the bank. It'd be about $55,000. Now remember, the parents started with nothing. Could you imagine the difference of actually starting off your life, your marriage with $55,000 to start with? Or let's go best case scenario. because hopefully one day this is not just a rare occasion. This is something that we should all start doing in our community. So using a best case scenario, let's say the young lady he married, parents did the exact same thing. And on that wedding day, they give her a check for $55,000. So now we got $110,000 that this young couple is starting their life off with. Could you imagine the advantages that would come? Down payment for homes and things like that. Already have money that they could put into investing. I mean, so many opportunities that they're starting their life off with that the parents didn't have that opportunity. But yet, they made sure that that happened for their children. So now, let's continue going. That young couple gets pregnant. Well, they both know what their parents did for them and how much it helped them starting off their life. So when they find out their child's pregnant, they do the exact same thing. They go to the bank, they open up an account, $50 a week. Now, $50 a week is just an example. It could be more, it could be less. It's all about the consistency. So back to the illustration. They put $50 a week in the bank. Now, the grandparents, they've already had this money set up. That money has always been going that way. They're now in their 40s. So they still got a lot, another 20 some years of working. So they're going to continue keeping that money in that account. They never stopped. Once they paid that check to their son, they just start putting it in there. Now that's for the grandchildren. So let's say they did that. The young lady's parents did the same thing. So now another 20 years go by. And the was say a son again. The grandson now is 20 years old. And he's found a young lady he wants to start his empire with. Well, now the parents have saved $55,000. The paternal grandparents, $55,000. And the maternal grandparents, $55,000. So here we have a check for $165,000 being given to the grandson to start his family. Now let's go best case scenario. If the young lady he was marrying did the same thing. Now we're looking at over $360,000 that is given to this couple to start their life together. Could you imagine the advantages that they will have with that kind of money? Now, that was all best case scenario. But if we even break it back to the $150,000, but we're seeing how generational wealth is built. And we're doing this on $50 a week. $50 a week, 40 years, 3 generations. We went from nothing to over $360,000. So that's the importance of how we build generational wealth. That's also the importance of keeping a family together, working together to build that empire. See, you may not be the ones that benefit the greatest, but we're talking about your children and grandchildren. You wanted them to do better than you. And that's the goal in building generational wealth. And this is how we have to do it. It's not about large amounts of money. It's about consistency, setting that money aside. Now, we can take this a little further because, I'm an insurance man, so I'm going to come at you from an insurance perspective. We did this just putting money in the bank. Right now, your money's getting about 0.5% interest in the bank. And yet we still had it built like this. Now, if we were to put that money into an index fund, do an insurance policy, well, that $55,000 would be about $65,000. And you could also have a $500,000 life insurance policy on your child in the event of a catastrophe that would happen. So these are things that we need to start considering, looking at, and seeing the importance of how keeping a strong family together, setting aside funds to build wealth. See, that's how generational wealth is built, and how we can grow as a people if we keep our family strong. Well, I enjoyed having the conversation with you this week. I'm looking forward to come back next week. We'll have another interesting discussion. And so you have a wonderful day.